In the salty breeze of Mombasa's coast, beneath the steel arms of cranes and the clatter of containers, worked a man named Katana. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, but he was good. One of the best dockers at the Kenya Ports Authority. He'd worked there for over a decade. He knew every bolt, every siren, every supervisor's mood, just by how he sipped his morning tea. And lately, Katana could feel it. The winds of change. Maybe, just maybe, his promotion was coming. He even bought Mahamri Nambazi for the receptionist that morning. Because when good news comes, you celebrate early. But life? Life had other plans. One dull Thursday, Katana was called to HR. Katana walked in with his chest high, thinking of the office chair with wheels that would soon be his. Instead, the manager coughed, looked everywhere except into his eyes, and said, "Mr. Katana, we're restructuring. You've served well, but we're letting go of old staff. No ceremony, no gratitude, just we're letting go." "Nothing personal," the HR said, handing him a brown envelope. Katana stood there silent. He didn't argue, didn't beg. He took the envelope and handed in his ID. He walked to the washrooms, looked at himself in the mirror, and whispered, "Hold it together, Katana. Hold it together." As he sat in the Nissan back home, his mind ran wild. He thought of his wife, Safi, who was constantly complaining that he wasn't raising fast like other men. He thought of his son, Baraka, who was a Form 4 candidate. He thought of his mother in the village, who needed money to go bury her nephew, and his rent that was due in 2 months. He thought of his pride and concluded that he wasn't going to tell them, at least not yet, because a man's job is to provide. If he cannot provide money, then he must provide stability, even if he is to do it all by himself. That evening, he got home as usual. Safi was in the kitchen cooking chapati and grumbling as usual. "Welcome home. I hope the office people didn't kill you." Katana smiled. The traffic at the bridge and at lights almost did. I can't wait for the Chinese to complete the highways. And your company can't increase your salary," Safi hissed. Katana didn't reply. He walked into their bedroom, sat down, took off his shoes, and entered the bathroom. As he stood in the shower, he told himself that he must hold it together. The next morning, Katana dressed up as usual, the same spray of cologne he used every day. In his bag, he carried the same navy blue overalls, same black boots, and 6,000 shillings was the only cash he had. This morning, he didn't head to docks. Instead, he went straight to his cousin Rashid in Old Town, a man with 3 tuk-tuks, 5 debts, and 0 judgment. "Are you sure you can do this?" his cousin asked. "I must do this, for now, while I search for a new job." "It is not easy," his cousin said. "I'll give you one, though it is an old one. You will bring me 800 shillings daily." And that's how Katana's new life began. No uniform, no schedule, no tea breaks, just heat, sweat, exhaust fumes, and endless "punguzabe, bwana." Some customers wanted AC, inside a tuk-tuk, some with fake M-Pesa confirmation messages. Some vanished at their destination like mist. By evening, Katana had made 2,700. He sent M-Pesa 800 to his cousin. On his way home, he bought cooking oil and wheat flour. He also bought a pair of open shoes for himself. Katana got home a little late because he had to look for a safe place to pack his tuk-tuk far from home lest his family find out. Safi didn't even look up from her phone when he entered. "Hope you brought oil and wheat flour. Tomorrow I'm hosting our Shama meeting." He smiled and handed her the shopping bag. She didn't even say thank you. That night, lying on the bed while Safi scrolled through TikTok happily, Katana stared at the ceiling. He wasn't angry or bitter. He was just tired. He told himself that as long as there was food on the table and school fees were paid, they didn't need to know that he was suffering. Every morning, Katana continued his silent performance. He would wake up before the alarm, dress pack his navy blue overalls, black boots, spray his cologne. He would stand in front of the mirror and encourage himself. "You've got this, Katana." Every morning, Safi would say the same thing without stepping out of bed or even looking at him. "Don't forget to ask for that salary increase. We can't keep managing like this." Katana would nod, smile, and step out. He would walk out of the gate and walk to where he had parked his tuk-tuk at a filling station between two matatus. He had learnt to wear his pain like a perfume, just enough for the street to smell it, but not strong enough for his family to notice. From 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., he crisscrossed Mombasa town with his tuk-tuk. Sometimes passengers insulted him. Other times he carried some whose perfume made his eyes tear and his nose blocked, not to mention dodging traffic, chasing passengers, arguing with bodas over parking spots. But he never complained. He took in all their insults not because he was weak, but because hunger has no time for pride. At 4:30 p.m., he would pack his tuk-tuk at a filling station near City Mall. He would go into the mall's washroom, freshen up, and change into a clean black t-shirt that he kept in his bag. By night, Katana was a bouncer at Club 001 in Nyali. He stood at the entrance, arms crossed, watching drunk men try to enter with no shirts and too much confidence. He got slapped twice, thrown up on once. One lady called him a cute security teddy bear. He didn't know whether to smile or cry. He stood for 8 hours straight. His knees ached. His once smooth palms are now rough and cracked. His perfume replaced by pure sweat and cheap club smoke. But still, he showed up. Why? Because no one else would fight for his family if he didn't. The club paid him 2,000 shillings per night, just enough to add to his tuk-tuk earnings and pay for bills and Safi's demands. The next morning, he would freshen up at the mall's washrooms and walk back to his tuk-tuk to continue his hustle. Then by 8 p.m., he would go back home and act like everything was normal. Back at home, Safi had noticed some changes. His shirts were discolored at the shoulders and underarms. He now wore open shoes more often. His hands were getting rougher, and his lips were dry like someone who had been talking all day under the sun. One night she asked him, "Did you change departments? Nowadays you come home smelling like exhaust fumes and battery water." Katana smiled faintly and said, "You are right, but it's temporary." Even though Safi didn't believe him, she let it slide. One day, Safi's doubts were confirmed when she bumped into Katana's cousin Rashid at Markiti. "Jumbo Safi, I'm sorry for what happened. I believe he will find another job soon. Otherwise, how are you and Baraka?" "Excuse me, who are you talking about?" Safi asked. "Katana, your husband. In fact, the tuk-tuk he is driving is mine. He also told me that he is working part-time as a bouncer at a club. Looks like he's managing well because you look well kept." Safi didn't say a word. In fact, she didn't buy the dera that she wanted. She went straight to her friend Maggie and gave her the gist. "Can you imagine?" she hissed. "A tuk-tuk driver, a bouncer. This man will make me run mad." That night when Katana returned, she did not greet him. She stood at the door, her wrapper tied tighter than a suicide rope, arms folded. "Where are you coming from?" She hissed. Katana was startled. Before he could open his mouth to talk, she shouted, "You were fired weeks ago." She didn't wait for an answer. "Driving a tuk-tuk? Babysitting drunkards? That's what you've become. And you kept it from me?" Katana stood still, silent. "Since when?" she asked. "Since the day you asked me to buy groceries and give you money for a new dera because you were hosting a Shama meeting." So you've been pretending and acting as though everything is fine? You are unbelievable." Katana nodded slowly and sat down. "I didn't want to bring fear into the house. Besides, you are always angry every other day, and Baraka is a candidate. I wouldn't want him to be anxious about anything. But no worries, I have found something else." "Something else?" Sophie scoffed. Tuk-tuk driver and a nightclub bouncer? Is that what you have reduced us to?" Katana didn't answer her. Instead, he got up and went to his bedroom. But on his way, he met Baraka's terrified look. Sophie got so angry, and from that night, she changed. She no longer served her husband food on the table. Katana would come home from work, shower, and serve his own meal, and eat all alone at the table. At times, he would be forced to warm the food by himself. Baraka's behavior towards his father also changed. He would even talk back at his father. But still, Katana woke up early in the morning and left the house on an empty stomach and a full heart, because a real man doesn't stop being a father and a husband because life hits hard. He had to find new ways to cope with his family, even though they no longer Z'd him. But deep down, he was hurting. Hurting because the people he was suffering for were treating him like a nuisance. Sophie made it worse because she not only disrespected him in private, but she would belittle him in public. She would talk about her husband with anyone who cared to listen. Hey, can you imagine? He wakes up early and expects me to make his breakfast? He comes home smelling like a city dump site. Who knows whether the drunkards vomit on him? Of all the jobs in the world, he chose to be a bouncer, tuk-tuk driver. When the women giggled, she would say, "You know me, I simply say it as it is." I don't call a spade a big spoon. This same Sophie, who was once charming and loving. She would wait for her husband to come home from work and talk about everything and anything that had happened during the day as they had dinner. During the day, she would call and ask him what he wanted for dinner. She would wake up and prepare breakfast for him and even pack him fruit salad to take to work. Nowadays, she no longer serves him. In fact, she covers his food with a broken or a burnt, discolored plastic plate and leaves it on the kitchen counter. As if that wasn't enough, she started comparing him to other men. Are you aware that Betty's husband got promoted again? They just bought a car and a new mattress. They call it Otho, something I can't really remember. Do you know that Muhammad bought a plot of land? And he bought new sofa sets and changed their fridge. In fact, nowadays they use the most expensive tissue paper in the supermarket. But you can't even afford a new doormat. Katana didn't answer, not because he didn't feel the sting, but because he had made peace with the fact that a man cannot fight in the market and still come home and engage in another fight. One rainy evening, Katana got home after a really rough day. His tuk-tuk broke down, and he had only made 1,100 shillings the whole day's work. He couldn't afford a mechanic, hence he opted to fix it by himself. When he got home, Sophie opened, looked at his oil and grease-stained clothes, and told him that he couldn't get in because he was going to make the house dirty. She asked him to wait at the back of the house as she fetched some old clothes. Katana stood there in shock. He then went and sat down on a plastic chair in the rain. That evening, he didn't feel like a man anymore. He felt like a burden in his own home. What happened to his wife? Where was his Sophie? The vows and promises they made to each other now only lived on the photo frames on the wall. You got this, Katana, you got this. It's temporary. You can do this, don't give up. Men don't cry, he kept telling himself. But the reality was that he was tired, physically and emotionally. His spirit was cracking, and his soul was wounded from insults that were invisible. The next morning, he still left the house as usual. As a husband and a father, Sometimes they keep working even with bleeding hearts because they know that giving up would mean hunger for the people who still call them useless. One day at the filling station, as he was wiping his windshield with a torn piece of cloth, his eyes were red and swollen. His back ached from the night shift. His head was pounding from 2 days of lack of sleep and proper food. The sun was cruel, and customers were scarce. He had barely made 1,500 shillings. He wanted to take a short break, eat something, and lie down for a few minutes when he got a call from Baraka's school. On the phone was the academic teacher. "Mr. Katana, I am calling to remind you of the arrears you have not cleared. You have till Friday to clear 18,600 shillings, or we won't register Baraka for the final exam." Katana tried to plead for more time, but the academic teacher was adamant. "When we register the students, their parents go back on their promises, hence leaving the school with many debts." Halo, are you there?" she asked. Katana blinked. Yes, I am here. I'll see what to do. But wait, how much have I paid so far?" "You have paid 4,500 only, sir," she replied. "Okay, thank you," he said, and ended the call. Katana's head was spinning. He had to sit down. He sat there in silence. What happened to the 10,000 I gave Sophie to pay school fees with? What did she do with that money? Was he ready to confront her? His house is uninhabitable, as it is right now. Was he ready for the obvious? He chose peace instead. He had a deadline to meet. He had only 1,500. His savings were used to buy the front tire and pay for the insurance. At least he was sure of 6,000 from his night shift. He had 2.5 days to make 12,600 shillings. That night, when he got home, Sophie was busy on her phone as usual. Without greeting, she stood up, arms folded. "They called me about the school arrears." "Why haven't you cleared the fees?" Sophie hissed. "I am working on it," Katana replied. Sophie laughed sarcastically. "Working on it? He won't sit for his finals if the money isn't paid by Friday and you are working on it." "Sophie, I am doing everything I can." "Then do more," she shouted. "By the way, the 10,000 you gave me last month is what I used for my friend's daughter's wedding." Katana looked at her. He wanted to give her a piece of his mind, but then he remembered that he had chosen peace. He walked past her and went to their bedroom. Baraka followed him into the bedroom. "Dad, I can't miss my finals. You can't do this to me." The look on his son's face broke something in him. He looked at him and said, "Go to sleep. I will fix this, don't worry." He took off his clothes, showered, and laid on his bed. That night he couldn't sleep. He waited until the night was quiet, then he took his keys, ID card, and a bottle of water, his phone, and left the house without telling anyone. He went to the filling station, mounted his tuk-tuk, and drove off into the night. He was determined to raise the 12,600 shillings, or die trying. It wasn't about pride anymore, or about Sophie, or about proving anything anymore. This was about his son, not letting the boy who once saw him as his role model grow up feeling like he had a loser for a father. As the tuk-tuk bounced over potholes and darkness, Katana whispered prayer between his teeth. "Just one more time, Jehovah. Grant me your grace and favor. A miracle from you will save me and my family." The roads were quiet but not empty. Baraka found his way to Lakoni Ferry, then to Cinemax Nali. From Nali to Mtwapa, he was picking up anyone who waved him down. Night shift nurses, club hoppers, partygoers wearing borrowed shoes and wigs. Some paid him 500, some 700, some bargained, begged and paid 100. One woman who paid him 100 thanked him and said, "God will bless you." Katana nodded. By 4:30 a.m., his hands were shaking. He packed at a filling station and counted the money he had made so far. It was 3,600. His feet were swollen inside his shoes, his shirt soaked. His stomach felt like it was swallowing itself, but he still had a long way to go. So he kept on from 4:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. He picked and dropped. He picked up market women who paid him $300 and picked up tourists who paid him $5. He picked up a heartbroken man who had broken up with his girlfriend. They had come all the way from Nairobi for a vacation. He told him, just drive me anywhere and everywhere. Every time he added the cash to the sling bag across his chest. By 6 a.m. in the morning, he bought Kahawa na KDF Moja, leaned back and sighed. Katana, you will not faint. You will not fall. Just drive. And so he drove for 3 days and manned the club at night. By 5:30 a.m. on Friday morning, after dropping the market women, his legs gave way before his will even did. His hands were numb, and his eyes had started switching off from exhaustion. So he drove to the only safe place he could think of, to his house. That day he drove the tuk-tuk and packed it straight at his doorstep. He knocked, and it was Baraka that opened the door for him because he was up early preparing for school. He stumbled in and handed him the bag, and between his breath he said, "School fees." He then collapsed on the coach and slept. Baraka, still standing at the door, looked at the tuk-tuk and looked at the bag on his hand, then looked at his father lying on the coach. His hands were swollen, his face dry and ash-powdered, his chest rising slowly, like even breathing now required effort. And suddenly, Baraka saw not a failed man, but a warrior, silent, tired, and undefeated. That morning, a boy became a man, and a father who was once mocked as useless became a legend in the eyes of his son. He went inside and woke his mother up. When Safi saw Katana, her concern was that he had stepped on her white carpet with his dirty shoes. When she was about to vent out as usual, Baraka handed her the bag. She opened it and counted the money. It was 27,700 shillings. She looked at Katana, then at her son, who had tears in his eyes. He told her, "School fees. Mom, school fees." Then he turned and went to his room and shut the door. When he was done preparing for school, Baraka walked to the kitchen. "Mom," he said, "you've been too hard on Dad." Sophie turned, offended. "Excuse me?" Baraka stood firm. While we were complaining, he was working. While we were judging, he was surviving. And while we were asleep, he was fighting for us. Then he walked out. Sophie stood frozen as her heart began to thaw. Sophie looked at her husband. She took off his shoes and made him lay comfortable. She switched on the fun and let him sleep. Katana lay there for hours. That evening, Sophie walked to Katana, still lying on the couch. She knelt beside him, held his bruised hand, and whispered, "I'm sorry." Katana didn't speak. He just opened one eye and smiled. She stood up, brought warm water, massaged his feet, and kissed his forehead. For the first time in years, she saw him, not for the job he lost, but for the family he never left. A few moments later, Baraka arrived from school. After taking a shower, he joined his parents at the dinner table where they ate in silence. Baraka couldn't hold back, so he broke the silence. "Dad, I'm sorry for being such a brat. I didn't know you were going through all this for us. I want to thank you for doing what most fathers would have given up on, for driving tuk-tuk while we looked down upon you, for working as a bouncer while we laughed at you, for not walking out on us." Sophie looked at Katana, who was seated quietly all this while, and said, "I am sorry. I didn't know it had gotten that bad. I thought you were just being proud. I am so sorry. Please find it in your heart to forgive me." Katana didn't say a word. He ate his dinner in silence. From that night, there was a great change in the house. Sophie started respecting Katana. She served him proper meals and even began packing lunch for him. She would drop "thank you" and "I love you" notes in his bag. Months passed. Baraka sat for his KCSE exams. When the results were announced, Baraka emerged the best student in Mombasa County. The national media houses covered his story. When asked what was his motivation and who inspired him, he said, "My inspiration and my role model is my dad. A few months ago, last year, after losing his job, I called him lazy. I thought he was useless. But I was wrong because while I slept, my father worked. While I judged him, he was sweating under the sun for me. He once slept in his tuk-tuk driving for days and nights without food or sleep, just to clear my fee balance, no rest and no applause. So today, I want the whole nation to know that I wouldn't be here if it were for him." He turned to Katana and said, "Daddy, I see you and I honor you. If I ever become anything great, it is because I walked in the footsteps of a man who did not let poverty define his dignity." The whole school erupted in applause and tears. Katana, who was standing beside his son, felt honored and valued, which to him was the greatest reward for being a father. Both him, Sophie, and Baraka hugged tightly. Sometimes the strongest men don't roar. They rise, grind, and go again, even when no one claps. Not every hero is loud or wears a cape. Some of them are dressed in torn shirts, drive old tuk-tuks, and carry bags of dirty notes, just so that their children never have to beg, giving them a warm smile, a genuine thank you, or a heartfelt hug might be all they need to feel appreciated. Katana lost his job, but never lost his family, even when they couldn't see it. To every son and daughter out there, before you judge your father, pause. Ask yourself, what does he carry each day when he walks out that door? Not just the tools or bags in his hands, but the weight of your dreams, your needs, your future. Maybe he doesn't speak much. Maybe he doesn't always smile. But behind those tired eyes might be a man silently breaking, just to keep you whole. He may not have titles or trophies, but if he's still showing up, still trying, still fighting, then that man is a hero. Don't wait until he's worn out to say thank you. Don't let your "I love you" come too late. Give him the respect now. Tell him you see him, because even strong men need to be reminded they matter. To every wife out there, please remember, sometimes your husband may not tell you when he's drowning. He'll smile, go quiet, say it's fine. But inside, he might be breaking, not because he's weak, but because he's trying to stay strong for you, for the kids, for the home. You may not see the pressure, the fear of failing his family, the shame of not having enough, the pain of being looked at like he's not enough. But what he needs, more than food or sleep, is your respect, your kind words, your touch that says, "I still believe in you," even when money is low, even when things are hard. Don't let your words be daggers, let them be shelter, because when the world beats him down, your love should build him back up. This is a special dedication to my husband and to every father out there still fighting quietly. We see you. We honor you. Your sacrifice is not wasted. You didn't fail. You fathered. If that man is your hero, then like, subscribe, and share this video with them. Thank you for watching.